feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If they wanna go eat, then you know I'm gonna feed them. If you're coming for me, hope you're ready for a demon. I got eyes in the back of my head, I'm seeing. Take me for granted and you know I'm leaving. I'ma take what's mine with the webs I'm weaving. I could take this crowd from seeing to believing. Got a taste for blood and my tongue keeps bleeding from the words I spit. So sharp, so freezing, so cold. Behold, frostbite they feeling. I could tear you apart or I could go heal them. Don't believe in fate, don't believe in ceilings. I just need a taste and my mind starts feeling. I don't pace myself, I grind on kneeling. Got lust for change, I just love the feeling. I ain't gonna give up. Got too little time, I'ma live up. Head down, push forward through the tough times. Cause anything worth doing is a tough climb. And I ain't gonna give up. Got too little time, I'ma live up. Head down, push forward through the tough times. Cause anything worth doing is a tough climb. Cause I'ma live life for the fight, yeah, I'm here to get it. I got drive, got sight, always have a vision. I don't lie at night, I be in my feelings. I'ma be fine, need time and I'll soon be winning. I live life for the fight, yeah, I'm here to get it. I got drive, got sight, always have a vision. I don't lie at night, I be in my feelings. I'ma be fine, need time and I'll soon be winning. I can feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If they wanna go eat, then you know I'm gonna feed them. If you're coming for me, hope you're ready for a demon. I can feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If they wanna go eat, then you know I'm gonna feed them. If you're coming for me, hope you're ready for a demon.
What's happening, YouTube and the internet? Terrence here, and well, we're back inside the lab. It's been a while, but we here. It's a little rough start to getting the show up and going, and we got a lot to talk about, fam. We got a lot to talk about. We got a lot to address here in the community in between AMD's Ryzen 7000 launch. I think today's title or today's topic is relevant more now than ever in between launches, because we're on the precipice of new hardware coming along the lines of Intel's 13th generation Raptor Lake and AMD's upcoming AM5 socket, and the launch of their Ryzen 7000 series lineup of CPUs. So if you are tuning in on the replay, do be sure to stick around for the full duration of today's show. There will be timestamps. I'm going to experiment with timestamps once again. I stopped doing it because YouTube changed how they displayed for viewers, so I stopped editing. But for our replay viewers, you will see captions down in the description box or right here along the bottom of the video load bar, so you can follow along the conversation and jump right into areas or topics that may interest you the most. And to our replay viewers, if you have a question about anything that we discussed throughout the duration of today's live show, do feel free to leave a timestamp with the exact moment of the show that you would like for me to address in the comments. Now, YouTube also rolled out this really neat feature, y'all, that I'm super hyped for and super excited to use more of, say, for the distribution of shorts. And that's where we can actually now reply to comments with shorts, and you will get directly notified of your comments. So this could be super helpful for me to further explain any issues you may have or any questions you may have, to help troubleshoot any issues you may have with your journey as a PC gamer along the way. And if you're a first-time viewer, welcome. I welcome you to hit the subscribe button for me. My subscribe pop-up's not working, but I welcome you to hit the subscribe button for me. Also, like this live stream. It's going to help get it out in front of as many viewers as possible and help push this message out in front of as many viewers as possible. And that is, which approach is or could be best for you, the buy now or the wait approach, and what exactly does it cost, and or what exactly does it save? This question is brought up, so many times throughout the community. In most cases or most instances, gamers who want to make the transition over to this platform, over to the PC platform, they're unsure of when's the right time to buy. Like, should I get the latest Intel CPU that's out right now, or do I say wait for 13th generation Raptor Lake, in a few months, or should I even still wait for 14th generation because Intel is working on both architectures simultaneously. We're just going to get 13th generation first. And with the launch of AMD's 7000 series, you best believe we're likely going to get a 7000 series plus, maybe in 8 months from now or 9 months from now. So you could constantly be waiting and waiting. And that's something we're going to talk about. I'm foreshadowing a little bit here, but that's something we're going to talk about at one point or throughout the duration of this live stream. If you're checking in with us now, I welcome you to hit the like button for me. For our viewers who are just popping in, let me know everything is going well on your end. Audio's good, picture's good, and it's been a while since we did this. But also tell me what is going on in your neck of the woods. Right, like right now, I'm over here on the East Coast. It's sunny. It's Sunday. Trying to get back into a regular schedule for our live shows. It was a comment that was left in the comment section or in the chat box. It's probably still there, but one of the members in the community essentially roast me for constantly rescheduling and canceling a live show. And I just want to address that here really fast. It's not, it's not something that I actually condone or something that I want to do. It's a necessary evil to curating content at the moment, and given my current situation as I try to operate here out of the makeshift, still creating relevant topics and trying to get back to a mode that still allows me to say deliver valuable content, whether that's in a format that we've seen previously in older videos or in the more recent format the community has seen with the content distribution. I'm here to tell you right now, we would like to get back, and we will get back to how we previously shot videos, where they were a little bit more dynamic and there was more substance and context behind whatever it is the topic we were covering, whether that was older legacy hardware. It's slightly redundant. Don't like using the term necessarily older, more so as in conjunction with, say, obsolete. We more so like to refer to the older components as legacy hardware. So rather that's getting back to covering legacy hardware and the value of the used market is, or the value that's being ignored by the used market by newbies and, gamers who are looking to upgrade or jump into the platform, is an area that just cannot be left ignored and should have a little bit more attention and praise in terms of what's accessible and available over there on the used market. So we're going to get back to that format, I assure you, and with the live streams being published on a regular weekend basis. Now, the publication of the live stream has always been a tricky, I've always had a tricky approach to it, because trying to determine what day of the week and what time frame is best accessible for all viewers is an ongoing experiment, if you will. That's something I constantly am striving to understand and striving to get a firm grasp on times that work best for the majority of the community. Understandably, you won't find a time or a time window or a time frame that's going to work out for everybody. It's just not feasible. It's not even practical, in all honesty. But if we can get to a schedule that's convenient for the majority of the viewers, that will at least leave the replay option for those who are unable to, say, attend that time frame. Previously in the past, I experimented with doing 2 live streams in a week, but it began to be just a little bit too much, and I don't want to commit to something that we're unable to stick through and unable to commit to, if you will. So we will have our weekly live XP shows running back on the weekends, with regular content posted in between, especially with the advent of Ryzen coming in, or AMD Ryzen 7000 coming in less than 10 days. It's September 27th. It's right around the corner, and then Raptor Lake thereafter. And then we have NVIDIA's launching their RTX 40 series, likely sometime between Q3 and Q4. So that's towards the end of this year or early of next year, somewhere between there. So we just have to wait and see, but we have a lot to talk about and a lot to get caught up on, but still publish videos here on the regular. I did a poll asking the community, would you be interested in watching YouTube shorts? Like if I publish YouTube shorts on this channel? And while the poll, didn't gather as much votes that I would have liked, it still gave me a firm idea of who would be interested in watching shorts if I published them here on this channel. And that was 100% of those who partaked in the poll. So thank you for those of you who partaked in the poll. You get a round of applause to y'all here really quickly. But thanks to all of you who participated in the poll and at least said, yeah, you know what, hey Lab, if you create shorts, we'll watch them instead of you having to go create them on another channel, which is something that I necessarily did not want to do. And that is create shorts on a separate channel, let alone create shorts, period. But I do like the concept and the idea of being able to reply to comments using shorts. So just some things to look out for, even for our regular subscribers and our regular viewers who say we're unable to make it today because the scheduling has been unorthodox, and you know, I haven't been promoting the live streams as much as I have in the past. So to you, fam, who are watching and most likely on a replay, because I do push and promote the replay quite a lot. I mean, I leave the live streams up, links in the chat and all. I leave them up as is. That way you can get the experience of being a part of the live experience as much as possible, although you're watching on the replay. At least you could take pauses and breaks and you won't miss anything. Or if you have an ad pop up, you won't miss anything. And again, there will be time chapters down below that addresses a lot of things we're talking about now, especially with getting most of the community caught up here with the content. Now, I've also been keeping subscribers in the community updated over on our email list. So if you're not over in the Lab Insider insider list, I highly recommend you join. You can find a link down in the description box below, or you can find a link in the chat here in a few seconds. Maybe Mrs. Ma will drop it in there for me, but you can find a link to our email list. It's totally free to sign up, and I have been keeping the core members of the community up to speed and up to date. So if you want the information a bit quicker and you want to stay in the know a bit more, I highly recommend you sign up for our email list. It's totally free. I just need your first name and your email address so we know how to address you and where to send your mail. And if I've been deemed unworthy to grace your precious inbox and all of the mail you likely receive on a daily basis, then you can always unsubscribe. No hard feelings. Totally understand. I get it. I've unsubscribed too from email lists that I've just fell out of interest for. Said, you know what, I don't have a need to stay subscribed to your email list, or the information that you're putting out isn't pertinent enough for me to want to stay on this list. So that is my goal with our email list, and that is to have a direct line of communication with those in the community who want to know what's going on with the content and myself as a creator and the channel overall altogether. So keep a lookout for that. You see it's in the chat. Don't do it now. Okay, at any point throughout the live stream towards the end, you can head over there and sign up. You can also become a channel member. Let's get these few shameful plugs out of the way. But you can also become a channel member to receive, I guess you could say, exclusive insider perks. That's behind the scenes content updates. When I move the studio, you'll be a part. You know, channel members will follow that journey as we get everything set back up and get back into a groove, and we transition from the makeshift into the new studio. So it's time to become a channel member. You can support with as low as, I believe it's $2.99. I believe it's $2.99, and I'm even considering adjusting the channel member subscriptions to make them even more accessible to the community as I continue my path to being a full-time content creator, y'all. Slowly getting there. We're slowly getting there, but all shameful plugs out the way. Just a few direct ways you can help support the channel, even for my regular subscribers and regular viewers who haven't signed up to become a channel member or haven't joined the email list. It's an extension of your support when you choose and decide to, say, support the channel in those ways, signing up for an email list and becoming a channel member. That's a monetary form of support, if you will, by becoming a channel member. But of course, just being a viewer here and commenting and liking and attending the live streams is the best form of support you can offer, because it will help me grow as a creator and it will help us push the content in front of more people. All right, so see, this is where time chapters come into play and how they can be beneficial. Because if you're watching a live stream, you just click through, you're like, what the heck? I don't want to sit through all that. All right, but all right, I tell you what, as we have a few more people joining, I just welcome you to hit the like button for me. Again, I don't the scheduling for this live stream has been in limbo. It's been in live stream limbo for a while now, and that is nobody but my own vault. That's an old movie reference, but it's my fault. So we'll see. How many people tune in, but regardless, each live stream is treated like an actual video. I mean, it stays up, so um, so that experience, there's a consistency in how the live streams are presented and how the content is presented. I mean, there's a level of consistency behind it. Okay, whether you're live or you couldn't, you couldn't attend the live stream today, you just go ahead and click on the thumbnail. I leave the live streams up again, and you can skim through it or find areas in the show that may interest you the most. One thing I do like to push and strongly encourage and recommend is to keep a listen out for questions or areas of concerns that you may have that you may not have thought of, but you may have heard me answer in the chat if another viewer asks, or if I bring it up myself in a live stream. So it's good to keep an ear, low to the keep your ear low to the ground and keep a listen out as we segue right into the beginning parts of the show. We did a little bit of housekeeping previously in our live shows. The housekeeping format was a little different, but as we shift over into into our permanent studio, I'm also considering a season 3 soft relaunch or a soft reboot of the live experience, where before we had season 1 and we're in season 2. Season 1 was a totally different experience, and in season 2, here where we are in season 2 now, a lot of the content distribution and the content style, if you will, has changed, but overall the content has remained the same. So with that out of the way, let's jump right into it. And again, if you have any questions or comments or concerns about anything discussed throughout the duration of today's live stream, do feel free to leave them down below. We're going to jump right into it. And again, the topic of today's live stream, or the topic of today's episode, is the buy now or wait approach. And in all actuality, what does it cost and what does it save? As a gamer, right? As a gamer, there's no greater feeling or there's no greater time than when in the now. From the moment you sit or stand in front of your TV or monitor, or to the instance of powering on your system of choice, whether that's a console, a PC, a Nintendo Switch, and loading up that game, whether that's Red Dead Redemption 2, Apex Legends, Fortnite, Madden 23. Hello, say Madden 23. I'm telling on myself now, but regardless, from the instance of powering on your system of choice and loading up that game, and I mean, there's no greater time than when in the now when we are doing that, right? When we are powering up our system and loading up our game. And now, as PC gamers, the last thing you'd be interested in doing is having to wait for said experience or that sensation. But when faced with the inevitable question of when is the right time to buy parts to build your PC, or when is the right time to buy a PC if that's a pre-built, the decision or answer may not be as clear, or may not be as easy for you to process to come up with a likely conclusion that's going to work for your expectations and your budget. So in today's episode, we're going to weigh in on when is the right time to seize the moment, and what the benefits to waiting, and the benefits to buying, and of course the pros and cons to both approach. So if you're new here, welcome to the Inside the Lab weekly live experience. I am Terrence, your host and operator here of this ride. And with that out of the way, let's ready up, settle up, jump right into it, and begin. Switch back here. Let's go back to the core, the meat and bones of the conversation, right? And that is starting off with the title highlights for this conversation, and that is the buy now or wait approach, right? What I call the buy now or wait approach. And as it pertains to PC gaming, or the pursuit of its or the pursuit of, that is trying to get into PC gaming, what we liken and attribute to making a hike or a climb, a journey. It's a mountainous expedition, right? It takes steps. It takes crucial steps. It takes agonizing steps. It takes having to do things you may or may not want to do, rather that's building your own system or researching parts and components. Maybe these are elements of the process you necessarily aren't looking forward to, right? But the buy now or wait approach, as it pertains to PC gaming, is a bilateral, what I would consider a bilateral consumer approach to buying PC components, right? Like specifically for buying PC components, because the value diminishes after a short amount of time. In between hardware launches, it's typically less than a year. And so if you've dropped thousands of dollars on a graphics card, or a couple $100 on a motherboard and CPU combination, you might think that what you bought is the best available on the market at that price range. But then 8 or 9 months later, something comes out that's just as fast, or if not faster, that may require the same amount of investment to, say, achieve that performance. So it's a bilateral consumer approach to buying PC parts, when your intentions are holding out for the best performance later versus targeting the best value for your money now. It's like, do I spend $500 now on a component or configuration which is perceived to be the best performance in its class, similar to what I just mentioned, or do you save and keep saving while waiting to upgrade or build slash replace your current system? And think about it. While you're waiting, what exactly are you gaining? If you already have a system, right? Like if you already have a PC, maybe it's not as bad, because what you're waiting for is a mild performance uplift in the games you play. So if you're waiting to upgrade your motherboard and CPU, or you're just waiting to upgrade your CPU, and this will allow you to stream games and record your gameplay, maybe, or you be able to run your games at a higher graphic settings or at a higher resolution. If it's meant to enhance your experience versus you actually gaining the experience, think about it. While you're waiting, what are you actually gaining? Not much. Not much, especially in the event to where you're missing out altogether. It's one thing we preach a lot about here on this community, and that's not necessarily sacrificing your experience as a PC gamer in hopes of holding out for just a little bit more. For example, what you can buy on today's market, say 10th generation i5 or 10th generation i3 or a 10th generation i7, if you're along the lines of a high end, could very much suit your needs now, versus you waiting for a 7600X or a 7800X. Again, this could depend on your current configuration. What platform are that you're on? Are you on an older DDR3 platform, and you haven't quite yet migrated over to DDR4? Yes, with AM5, DDR5 may become more of an option, but prices still have to come down on DDR5 DRAM. They're still a little high and hard to find, making the September 27th launch of AM5 that much more interesting. Something we'll have to keep a lookout for. But if you're on an older, say, DDR3 platform, maybe an AM3 Plus or AM3 socket or an older Intel socket, it's like, what are you waiting for? You're just waiting for the next best component. Is this what you're holding out for? Or are you ready to move to a configuration or I guess you could say, a price point that suits not only your budget, but your immediate expectations? You can gain such a huge performance leap coming from a second, third generation Intel CPU, or an older Haswell, or even an older FX series AMD CPU, old Bulldozer 8350 or 9590, a CPU on an older architecture where it's held your gameplay experience back significantly. or what you're able to achieve on the platform, because it can do so much more than just run your games. You can run your games and record them in a high fidelity. You can run your games, stream them, and record them in a high fidelity. Hardware limiting, of course, or hardware limiting, of course, but you're able to achieve these things, and you have the option, so long as you plan accordingly and plan properly with your build. But while you're waiting, what are you gaining? I'm sorry. That's what I meant. You see, I'm getting the rust off, y'all. I'm getting the rust off. Let me get my air horn together, and welcome the new viewers to hit the like button for me. First and foremost, if you haven't yet, hit the like button for me. And if you're a first time viewer, let me know in the chat box. If you're a first time viewer, hopefully this live stream, I will have earned your subscription. I will be entertaining and edutaining. That's educational and entertaining enough to have earned your subscription. But while you're waiting, what are you gaining? Right? What are you gaining? Are you gaining an additional 10 FPS by opting out and holding out for the next best CPU class, that being 13th generation Raptor Lake? So maybe you have an 8700 or an i5 8400, right? Like an older 8th generation CPU or 7th generation Intel CPU, and you're like, well, I skipped over Ryzen, all generations, all series, 1000, 2000, 3000, 4000. I'm sorry, not 4000, 3000, 5000. You skipped over all the AMD Ryzen series class and options, which coming from a 7th generation or an 8400 you would have had solid choices, especially with Zen 3. And then even then, coming from an older 8th generation i5 or 7th generation i5, like a 7400 or a 7600K, a 9600K would have suited your needs exceptionally well, and even better switching up to an i5 10600K. Some would consider those chipsets or those platforms dead platforms, but considering Z490 has an upgrade path all the way up to the 10 core 20 thread 10900K, I wouldn't necessarily consider them dead. I would consider that platform, and not that platform, but that I would consider that, that option a viable one, considering that you could actually grow your needs out, not necessarily jump right into a $350 or $400 10900K when you could pick up a $150, $160 10600K and still to be able to run games at an exceptional level of quality. B Nardo gets the air horn. What's happening, Bayu? I think I pronounced that right. My bad if I didn't. I've been getting roasted by the audience and those in the comment section. So, but let me switch back here. As Bayu Nardo said, hey, I'm trying to sell my PC. Do you have any tips? Sure. If you're selling just your rig, just your computer, I would take as many pictures if you can, at least up to 3, of your computer on and displaying a healthy readout of menus within your picture. For example, if you can download, say, a hardware monitor or hardware info monitor, or say the GeForce Experience. Also list out your specs, or you can also use the Windows System Manager to display things like temperature, RAM speeds, and cores. Just so any potential buyer feels at ease knowing that the system is actually going to function as stated or as listed, unless you say, hey, obviously, you know what, I'm selling as is. Bayu, you're selling as is, and you're selling, the PC with some fault attached to it. Maybe it comes on, maybe it comes right off, maybe it overheats, maybe it doesn't get any video out at all. But if you're selling it functioning and working to manufacturer specification, then you'd want to try to capture that in a screenshot. You can even take a picture of your monitor's window, just to show that the CPU temperatures are within specification, your graphics card, video RAM amount, your amount of RAM that's installed, any storage devices you have installed. I would display those indefinitely with the system on. And if you can, clean up your system, the internals. I know it sounds self-explanatory, but a lot of And no, a lot of gamers, we typically ignore the maintenance part when it comes to our systems, because they accumulate a lot of dust. Um, and so any pictures you take, you want the system to look clean and organized. And so long as you maintain the system and it kept it well maintained, you kept up with the upkeep on it, then you want to illustrate that in your photos and your pictures. However many pictures you want to take is up to you, but the more the better, but not just pictures without substance, but pictures with context. So take pictures of the motherboard inside of the unit. Take pictures of the PCIe lanes and any devices you may have installed in them, say your graphics card. So any potential buyer knows, hey, this seller doesn't have anything to hide. That is what I recommend the most, is eliminate the thought process of any potential buyer thinking you have something to hide. Now, when selling your system, I don't know, Bayu, if you want to sell it locally or if you want to sell it online. If you plan on shipping your system, of course, you want to try to use as much soft packaging as possible and limit any movement inside of the box. And if you're meeting in your area, I'm not sure where you're located at, Boo. In fact, I believe this is the first time we had the opportunity with interacting. So thank you for asking that question. But it depends on where you're located too. But some good selling tips I give for my North American friends here, and especially here in the States where I'm located, is try to pick areas that are well lit, and always try to recommend the safest place first. So police station or a Walmart or something to that extent. And when you can, only deal in cash. Um, but yeah, I know that's a lot to take in, and that's a conversation we've had before, and one we need to jump back into it. But take plenty of pictures, clean up your system first, unless you're selling it as is. You say, hey, the cable management is what it is. I'm selling it without a CPU cooler. And if it's one of those instances where you can't power it on, then you want to be as accurate as you can in the system's last state of condition. So if the last time you had a CPU cooler installed on it, or the last time you had a GPU installed, it had a clean video signal out, you were able to open up Windows, you were able to, say, go to a Google tab or a Windows, or I'm sorry, a Safari tab. If you're a Windows user still using Safari, shout out to you. Or if you're even more bolder and you're using Microsoft Edge. But if you can, be as accurate and descriptive as you can in the PC's last condition or last state that you left it in. And if you know undoubtedly that everything is good, then the seller should that should ease any areas of concern that any sellers might have. It's one of the things I look for, especially if I'm buying whole systems. Is there something that the seller potentially is holding back from me, or did they make a mistake and they think that it's a horror, a mistake that cost them their system, and they want to sell it because I damaged something. And it could be something as simple as you didn't plug in the input-output headers correctly and your system's not powering on at all, or you didn't fasten your motherboard down over on top of the man, I'm having a brain freeze, man. You didn't install your motherboard all the way down to the case, and now it's making contact with the back of the case, and so when it turns on, it automatically shuts off to protect itself. It could be a wide range of issues that inexperienced builders may come across and think that they did something that's detrimental now to the full integrity of their system, and they just want to sell it now and start over. And that also applies for individual components as well. Maybe they think they didn't install their CPU correctly. Maybe they think their graphics card is damaged because they did everything right. They retraced their steps. They went back and they checked it once. They checked it twice. They checked it a third time, and still they're not getting the video out. So maybe they think their graphics card is damaged, or their monitor is damaged, or they damaged one of the PCIe lanes during installation, and now their graphics card is not working. I'm going off on a tangent here, but what I'm trying to say most importantly is eliminate any potential areas of confusion a seller might have, and try to take as many relevant pictures as possible showing areas of a computer that are, or a PC that's typically damaged or missing parts, and that's any additional case screws, screws around your power supply unit, storage screws. Maybe you have ripped wires or damaged wires on your case. So hopefully some of those tips are helpful, Bayu. And if you have any more, or if you can think of any more questions that I didn't cover, please feel free to um, ask again. But all good stuff and great questions, which I do appreciate the questions come through. Again, they may be able to help somebody who didn't even know that selling your PC, all those things comes along with selling your older hardware, trying to recoup the costs for planning for new upgrades, something we're going to cover a little bit further down the road in this live stream. So let's shift back here as we were discussing the buy now or wait approach and the framework behind the buy now and wait approach. And it's a bilateral consumer approach to buying PC components. It's like, do I, buy this graphics card now, or do I wait for the next generation to launch to get a little bit more performance? Because I'm gonna have to, the current graphics card costs 500. I have that saved up, or I'm very close to it, but man, the next generation is only 7 months around the corner. 40 series graphics cards are going to be coming out in about 6 months. So it's like, do I wait, or do I buy the best I can now with my money, get the best value I can for my money with the components that are out right now? That is what we're going to dive even deeper into this conversation and discuss. So we talked about the buy now or wait approach, right? And this is a perfect segue into the question that has been proposed, or one that serves as the core foundation of this title, and that is when to buy and when to wait. It's like waiting to buy / build a gaming PC, or waiting to upgrade a critical component. What I call, or what I refer to as a critical component, at least here in this community, what I refer to as a critical component, that's your motherboard, your CPU, and your GPU. More importantly, especially your CPU and GPU, those two components will determine how you experience your games. Things like your resolution and your expected frame rate, your power consumption, the size power supply unit you may need, pairing your system with the right monitor, not the most expensive, right? Not the fastest in terms of refresh rate and low response time, but the right monitor with your system, because that could vary depending on your CPU and your GPU. And those are what I refer to as your critical components. Now, other components will be feature focused, or would be feature focused in between upgrades. So those are what I refer to as generational. They introduce new features and improve performance every generation, essentially. And that's components like your cases may come with different headers like USB Type-C, or they may come with RGB, because everybody loves RGB. RGB gets the air horn. But it may come with RGB, or it may have tempered glass on all sides instead of one, or it may have a vertical design, or it may have a an unorthodox design. So those are components that what I would consider generational, and they're going to introduce features and improve performance. But your critical components, those are your motherboard, your CPU, and your GPU. Most importantly, because your motherboard is the, I guess you could say, it's the core components that's going to determine the rest of your components, from your CPU type, whether that's an unlocked CPU, or that's a non-K based CPU, or if it's a higher core count CPU that may draw more power, say a 12 core or 16 core 7950X that's Ryzen 7000 16 core, or you can pick up a 5950X on the used market at a pretty good price if you can. Maybe no, it's not the latest and greatest. It's not the fastest 16 core AMD has to offer, but it's the most accessible and still at a flexible price. One that can still get, one that can deliver performance that exceeds what you previously had to endure. Again, I'm speaking on those of us who are stuck on another term we don't use as much in this community, but who are stuck on potatoes. I don't refer to systems. It's okay if others do it in the community, but you will never hear me refer to a system as a potato. I believe all PCs have potential to some extent. Daniel Yusuf, Daniel gets the air horn. It's good to see you, Daniel. Daniel says, as we gain with rays in real-time render nowadays, the core count increases image quality, the more cores. Well, and Daniel says more cores give more bit depth and bandwidth around PS2. The webcam could do like mixed reality / augmented light shafts and ray tracing. Well, yeah, and that's because on more so, especially on a console sense, your CPU is going to be doing most of the work, and most consoles have CPUs that are SoCs or systems on a chip, to where it's going to come with integrated graphics, and it's also going to come with your processing cores all on one on one PCB. Now, depending on how ray tracing is implemented, if it's on a hardware level like Nvidia has introduced, then your graphics card is still going to have to pull the majority of that work, because image quality will depend on GPU cores, with your CPU being able, or being the most critical cog in that whole machine, with being able to process things like simulation based effects, like you mentioned, Daniel, ray tracing or light shafting. Typically anything that has to do with simulating an effect is processed with your CPU, while your graphics card's primary role within the whole the whole efficacy or structure of your system, its primary goal is to render video. It's to process images. It's to calculate pixels, little squares, and to display them as fast as possible, to do it as fast as possible, and to display them. It's up to your CPU to process everything that's going on in between those frames. And when your graphics card is too fast for your CPU, your monitor, let's say, that's when you start getting ray tracing. I'm sorry, not ray tracing. I gotta add the daggone Charlie Brown womp womp womp, but not ray tracing. You guys know what I mean. Any simulated based effects, like shadows and things like that, are going to be processed by your CPU. The more cores your CPU has, so long as the game can actually take effect, or I'm sorry, could actually utilize those cores, then the smoother the actual end result will be. So if that's shadows turned all the way up, and you have the processing cores to actually process that math and to process that simulation, then the end result will be a much better product. You'll have better shadows, better light shafting, better guide rays, as Daniel pointed out. As Daniel says, actually, the NVIDIA takes the 1960s ray tracing and makes it work up to 10% faster with an accelerator, guide rays, and ray marching too. Exactly. But if you don't use the hardware and use limited software, the cheapest parts won't be different from the more expensive. But render / rays make a huge difference. Yeah, especially if we're meaning that they add to the overall experience. Like when Daniel says they make a huge difference, the more of these features that we have accessible in our games, then the more realistic the games become. And not just realistic in, say, photorealistic graphics, but just realistic in the way light actually behaves. Ray tracing doesn't necessarily get as much love and appreciation, I believe. And I've been an early adopter. I had an RTX 20 series when they first came out, and it was one of the early adopters of ray tracing. I have older videos in the catalog that may not be produced as great, but they're still healthy in terms of value, and content value. But excuse me, I was one of the early adopters to ray tracing, and initially I thought this really enhanced the experience of the game, to where now you see games that do have ray tracing, do need faster CPUs or CPUs with more cores, typically along the lines of an i7 and up, as they typically start at, with 12th generation notwithstanding, because of the unique core structure that Intel had introduced with 12th generation, but previously all non-12th generation on up with just the standard 8 cores and 16 threads, you typically needed more cores to run ray tracing, especially when you dialed up ray tracing to a higher setting. Cyberpunk 2077, I am looking at you. And Daniel says, type in True Light and True Lemons and additive lighting, indirect lighting, and difference lighting, full trace light pathways, and countless other things. Register your text file, turn on and display driver will look more lifelike. And that's one of the benefits to being a PC gamer, is having the option to do those things. Like you said, to turn on all of those different lighting settings to enhance your experience or to make games look more lifelike. I wish more games did support ray tracing, and it's good that some of them are coming back with or they're being retrofitted with ray tracing, to where they didn't support ray tracing when they first dropped, but now they're slowly starting to be adapted into newer games, and also with DLSS. So, like, what are your thoughts on DLSS? Let me know in the chat right now. DLSS is deep learning super sampling. AMD has a form of it too, called Fidelity FSR or FSX, but they have a form of it of deep learning super sampling as well, to where there's AI that's working behind the scenes that changes the image quality to improve FPS performance. And depending on the game and the graphics card that's DLSS is being ran on, it's almost worth it in some instances, to where you can gain a 20 to 30% performance boost and you don't necessarily notice the image quality. Cyberpunk 2077 DLSS wasn't implemented as well. Battlefield 2042, it wasn't implemented as well. But games like Call of Duty Warzone, DLSS could be worth enabling if you have a graphics card that supports it. And remember, AMD FSX can be utilized with both an NVIDIA card and a Radeon-based graphics card. But depending on your playstyle, depending if you favor a smoother experience versus a clearer experience or a detailed experience, then turning on DLSS could be worth it. Me, I'm indifferent. It really depends on the game. I play games for rich graphic and detail, so DLSS may not be worth it to me to sacrifice FPS. Typically, when I'm gaming, I guess I'm gaming objectively, then what may be playable to me may not be the same for you, and vice versa. Maybe you can play a game at a lower FPS. Shady Boy, it's good to see you, Shady Boy. What's happening, Shady Boy? I don't think I've seen, unless some of the regulars change their names on us, I don't think I've had the opportunity with interacting with you as well, Shady Boy. It's good to see you. Shady came in with the piece. It's good to see you. Daniel says, yeah, I found enabling the AMD True Audio hardware and True Video, True Visual, and Graphics Score next with True Light. You need to type in and turn on Infinity Cache / Fabric and then use Infinity Compressinator. The FSR and Super Resolution actually aren't working in the default AMD display driver. It's set to off or 0 or low. Okay, and is that in AMD's newest Crimson driver? That's something I definitely have to look into. Instead of super resolution, use hyper resolution or ultra resolution. Type it in and manually set value to 2. All right, that's a setting I'd have to. Not completely familiar with AMD's, with those AMD settings, to be 100% honest, as it goes out of the realm or spectrum to where most of us really just wants to jump in and get either a smooth or as smooth as possible experience, depending on our hardware configuration, or a detailed experience as much as possible, which you could actually benefit more just by compromising on gameplay settings. It's one of the recommendations we make here on a channel when you have to run on inferior hardware or hardware that may be considered legacy hardware or older components. But to be completely honest with you, Daniel, I'd have to look more into them. As Daniel says, yeah, toggle them on in the app and it's ugly, but make configuration text file for OS or Android and make registry keys like expandable strings and type it in. It's 10 times better or thousands of times better. Okay. All right, good stuff. Well, thanks for sharing, Daniel. All good stuff. Keep the conversation flowing. I want to stay. Thank goodness for video chapters, because our replay viewers would be like, what are they talking about? But the focus of today's show, the focus of today's live stream was the buy now, the when to buy and when to wait, or that's the section of the live stream we were at. Now, I wanted to highlight some of the pros and cons, you will, to waiting. With some of the pros to waiting, and we're going to go over here, we'll go over each one, and just kind of address some of the pros to waiting to buy new hardware or to upgrade your hardware. That is to swap out to buy a new graphics card. If you're coming from a graphics card that's about 10 years old, or worse, you don't have one at all, and you've been gaming on integrated graphics, you might be saying, well, I have a couple $100. What's a good graphics card to get with $300? Should I wait for the next iteration of AMD's RX 60, let's say 6400 or 6500 class of GPUs, 7500 and 7400 Radeon cards that will come out? Or should I just go ahead and, buy what's accessible, what's available now? Some of the pros to waiting are, well, you get access to newer features. Newer features on those graphics cards may come with improved DLSS performance, so more tensor cores over on NVIDIA side, or you may get improved ray tracing, or NVIDIA could drop a entirely new a new AI gimmick or hack, if you will, that enhances the experience, similar to Hairworks, or much like what we just were talking about, the significance of ray tracing, right? You get access to newer features when you're waiting. You're sacrificing what's available to you now by what could be good in the future or could be great. You're also waiting for more FPS, right? That's one of the benefits we talked about, to saying, you know what, I'm just going to wait for the next graphics card because, as illustrated in the past, it's going to be faster than the previous generation, so that typically translates to more FPS, or they may come with higher VRAM stacks, so you'll be able to enhance your visuals. So it's not just about getting more FPS, it's also being able to, say, run your games from 1080p low settings, like turned all the way down, and you're still maybe barely tipping the surface of 30 FPS, or maybe you're hovering somewhere between 35 and 40, but you're still not able to hit that 60 FPS mark, and you've already turned down all your graphics settings. Well, waiting for that graphics card that may come with improved VRAM might also net you enhanced visuals and more FPS, but this also allows you to build a bigger budget over time. This is one of the pros to waiting, and if one should wait, it's that right there. It allows you to build a bigger budget over time. So if you had only enough initially to jump into a XX60 class lineup of NVIDIA GPUs, or you're unable to jump into the 6700 series of AMD GPUs, and you only had a couple $100, well, maybe if you wait 6-7 months from the time of AMD releasing their RX 7000 series graphics cards, or NVIDIA releasing their RTX 40,000 series graphics cards, you'd be able to save up and add a little bit more to your budget, which would allow you to jump up a class that previously was inaccessible to you the moment you was ready to buy. And I'm talking about the moment you're ready to hop on over to, say, Amazon or B&H, or wherever you buy your hardware, right? Or if you're walking to a Best Buy. We talk a lot here about going to Micro Center, but Micro Centers aren't as easily accessible to everybody. And even for someone like myself, it's about a 45-50 minute drive for me to head to a Micro Center. But if you can get to a Micro Center, you will be able to take advantage of all kind of deals, and not just like savings, but bundled deals and clearance items that have been properly inspected and checked before they've been put back on the shelf. If you can get to a Micro Center, fam, you can save a bit of coin. And that's even with you building a bigger budget over time. Like if you're still evaluating the pros to waiting, and you're like, well, I'm okay with waiting an additional 3 months. Oh, like it's September. I have $350 to finish my build. Like I'm okay with my CPU, my motherboard. You know, I had 16 gigabyte kit of RAM, 750-watt power supply unit. Case is settled on. Maybe you're good on all the other non-critical components, or two of the three critical components, your motherboard, CPU, and now you're trying to determine which graphics card is going to be right for you. Well, fam, where you should have started is your monitor and the games you play. If you've done that, then the answer to which graphics card you may need should be a little bit clearer for you. If you know that you're going to play your games, or you want to play your games at a higher resolution than 1080p, so you set it on 2560 by 1440p, and your monitor, if you're able to snag a Gigabyte G or Gigabyte GQ 27-inch, like it's a 27-inch 1440p monitor from Gigabyte for under $200, it's 144 hertz refresh rate, then there's a certain type of graphics card you're going to want to need that's going to allow you to power that monitor's resolution and refresh rate along with your CPU. That's why it's one of the first things you consider buying. We did so many different short videos and shorts, and I'm going to continue to push that message, or to push that model to getting started with getting into PC gaming. It starts with the games you want to play and how you want to experience them. Typically your monitor, because your monitor is the window to your PC soul. Daniel says hardware prices now are interesting. Xbox One X or PS4 Pro is like an RX 480 at best. Very good point, because yes, while an RX 480 GPU prices are starting to adjust, but even an RX 480 now might run you might run you a little more than a PS4 Pro. I think I saw PS4 Pros going for about $150, $160. If you want to play Microsoft exclusives that are, available and accessible on PC, then it might be better suited for you to buy an Xbox One X, PS4 Pro. Then you're stuck on Sony's exclusives, which have typically been the best here. But it's a much cheaper option to say buying a PC of equal performance metrics, right? It's just nigh impossible or unlikely. You would have to serve the used market quite a bit, and even then, the level of legwork you put in could have been better spent by going in another option, buying a $150 or $160 used PS4 Pro. But with Daniel says a cheap Android phone might have an RX 630 or even a 730 or a 780 or RDNA. Well, but the newer consoles have an RDNA based graphics cards. It's interesting to see if we get a PS5 Pro or an Xbox Series SX Pro edition or what have you with the newer generation of RDNA integrated graphics. But I don't necessarily think that an RX 480 would be a better option. Maybe if you were adding to a system that didn't have a graphics card and you didn't want to migrate your whole entire ecosystem over onto a console, you only wanted to stay on the PC, but you were looking for a way to even mildly enhance your experience. But again, if you're gaming on a CPU that has integrated graphics or an Intel CPU with HD graphics, your experience probably isn't great at all, or you've been limited to the games you play. Maybe that's been Fortnite or Roblox, but maybe you want to branch out and play GTA 5 online. Super popular game, and you're going to want a dedicated video card to do so. But if you know that you only want to play on a 1920 by 1080p 60 hertz monitor, then an RX 480 will suit your needs just fine, because you're not trying to do much other than add to the type of games you want to play, not how you play them. That's going to be a byproduct by adding a dedicated card. But what it boils down to is being able to break in and add more to your catalog of games, going from playing games that can run on just about anything, like a mobile device, like a mobile phone, to now you're able to run your games at 1080p full settings, or 1080p medium settings, or high settings. Sometimes going from 1080p low to high can be even a noticeable difference in terms of detail in your games, or being able to process the frames faster, putting the load on your GPU as it should. Okay, your graphics card should be doing most of the work when it comes to your gaming experience. Okay, your graphics card should be doing most of the work. Your CPU should be able to process the things that are going on within the frame, and then your graphics card should be able to process those frames as much as possible, as fast as possible. But let's switch back here, as we were going on about the pros to waiting, and some of the pros again that we highlighted were you get access to newer features, right? Whether that's, for example, AM5. If you're waiting for DDR5, AM5 could be something worth waiting to upgrade, for you, or waiting to finish your build. If you have your case and you have your power supply picked out, I almost said kicked. I almost said kicked out, but if you have your power supply picked out and you have your case picked out, your storage, all the other non-critical components picked out, and you're like, I'm just waiting to decide on, the CPU. I know I won't need no more than 6 cores, but I really want DDR5. Like, I want to take advantage of that double data rate that's going to come with 5th generation of DRAM. Or you can settle on DDR4 now and don't have to necessarily pay for the, I guess you could say, the inflated price of DDR5, because they're still super expensive. I'd bring it up now, but it's not the, as Daniel says, oh, here's an interesting topic, DDR5. It is, and we'll have to save that for maybe even a pop-up live stream, hint, hint, that may come along the line here, because it is a conversation that I pointed out at first with AMD's keynote, and I saw that they didn't mention it at all with any kind of backwards compatibility with DDR4. And I had read a rumor, which, let me switch back here really fast, because man, oh man, and that I was wrong AMD video I did. I had a very fun conversation, I guess you could say, with the viewer, and I'm like, well, I don't report. Long story short, go back and read it and watch the video if you haven't. Right, it should be in the cards, or I'll probably leave some down in the description box below for more juice for replay viewers, or for you here on the live. If you want more Inside the Lab content, you'll be able to find it. But in that video where I said I was wrong, right, I was more so referring to about my guesstimations of AMD's AMD increasing the prices of Ryzen 7000, and I didn't report it as a viable rumor. In my reaction video to their keynote, I base it off of conjecture and some trends here in the market that we've noticed before. And AMD, of course, circumvented all expectations and launched Ryzen 7000 series at the same price point that previous lineup of CPUs launched at, and that was Zen 3. So in that video, I just mentioned that I don't report on rumors. To me, in my opinion, a rumor is a rumor until proven otherwise. So I don't make rumor-based videos. And when I do get into reporting and making content on news, because that is something that I want to add to the content flow of this channel, and that's actually curating videos around news that happen in the industry, some being your news outlet and your news source. And I can't do that, or I can't be that, if I can't properly keep you informed and updated about what's going on in the now. And I definitely can't do that with following a rumor mill. I don't. So I don't report on rumor mills, and it was insinuated that I do, but on the record, I can tell you I don't. As Daniel says, the key thing about what Daniel's talking about in the chat here about we don't see massive gains from DDR5. No, not as much as you would think with doubling the band rate. I think that's more so an adoption. It just hasn't been properly adopted yet, especially with motherboard makers. And I think this is one of the areas that's going to explain AMD's reasoning for not increasing Ryzen 7000 series prices. I could be wrong, and if I am, I'll make another GD video. Oh, Lab gets the air horn. If I'm wrong, then I'll make another video. But I'm not reporting on a conjecture, but I do believe we'll see higher than usual prices for B series and X series AMD AM5 motherboards. Mostly importantly because of PCIe 5.0 and DDR5 memory lanes. It's inevitable. How much sense would it make if you bought a Zen 3 CPU and motherboard 3 months ago, and now the latest and greatest has come out? Should you upgrade for DDR5 and PCIe 5.0? Not yet, fam. Not yet, because the massive gains, as Daniel pointed out, hasn't been seen yet. Or most importantly, DDR5 isn't as mainstream. You may see some of your other larger tech YouTubers testing DDR5 kits. You may even see benchmark videos of DDR5 modules and kits being tested. But those are being sent to those content creators so that they can create content and continue the hype up around DDR5. But they're not as accessible. So think about that before you consider wanting to make that leap over from a platform you just invested in, and you did that less than 6 months ago. Using my example of having a, let's say, X570 and RX 5600X, and you picked that up for maybe say $300. Maybe you got it on a bundle still. Maybe somebody was selling it because, they switched over to 12th generation Intel Z690 chipset. Maybe you're wanting to migrate over as well. Well, you have that option, but consider your why before pulling the trigger, right? Much like when we mentioned at the top of this show, consider what it is you're gaining from waiting. Okay, waiting for a 7600X. Like, what exactly do you have to gain? Because what you could be expecting to get out of it may not be all that significant, especially if it's something like DDR5. It may take a little while to mature. Daniel says, yeah, an X570 versus a B450 or whatever it was called, overclocks 150% better in the default spec from AMD. X570 and 670 should be the same. Not sure if it's changed. Well, usually you get, I can't verify 150% overclocks, but typically, and especially from my experience, you get better overclocks on an enthusiast chipset. And AMD, and this is the case with Intel, but all of AMD CPUs come unlocked. So to some extent, you can add to the multiplier. Maybe if it's 100 hertz or even 200 hertz in some instances, but you won't be able to push it far. Back when I was rocking my OG Ryzen 1600X, which is still a viable budget 6-core CPU that you could probably pick up in loads on the used market for under $70 or $80. But the 1600X on a B450, I could overclock with an additional 300 megahertz, but it would top out at about 4 gigahertz or 3.9 gigahertz, depending on the cooling solution. Regardless of the chipset, whether that was on an X400 series chipset or a B400 series chipset. This was 1600X, it was 300, X300 and B300, but from some of the numbers I've seen and other creators who have overclocked Ryzen, which especially between first generation Ryzen or Zen 1 and Zen Plus, typically didn't go that far in terms of overclock. And Daniel says, way I see it, the Ryzen is physics constant force vectors, 3D reality simulation like gravity and time, and Zen is everything. Yeah, Zen is an architect that I really think most of the tech world or tech community didn't initially see AMD really coming out of the box and shaking up not only just how we perceive pricing on new CPUs, but just their architecture as well, because Intel didn't include hyperthreading on their CPUs, especially on their non-i7 lineup of CPUs, cough, the higher end lineup of CPUs, until AMD did it and say, you know what, AMD said, oh, all our low end CPUs from the Ryzen 5 is going to come with hyperthreading. And so Intel decided to change that up with 10th generation, but we had AMD to thank for that. So Zen has come a long way, and I'm pretty sure it's not done. But switch back over here, recap the pros really fast. The pros to waiting, as we were in the buy now or wait right? The buy now, or when to buy and when to wait. Like that is the question on some old Shakespeare type stuff. Um, it's like when to buy and when to wait. And well, one of the pros, or not one, but three, specifically three pros to waiting, to make that leap between new CPU or new motherboard and CPU platform or new graphics card. Typically, a new motherboard will come with those newer features, some that I just mentioned, PCIe 5.0 or DDR5. Maybe you might get twice as fast storage speeds, or more PCIe lanes for more peripherals that you can add, say like a network card or dual graphics cards, or a capture card like an Elgato capture card. The more lanes, the more peripherals you can add to your system. So that may be something worth it to you. You say, you know what, yeah, lab, that's something that's worth waiting for me to upgrade to. Right, getting new features that I can take advantage of on day one. And then, of course, who wouldn't want more FPS? But sometimes more could be never enough or not enough. But who wouldn't want more FPS and enhanced visuals? Sure, that could be worth waiting, more FPS. But one of the biggest goals to waiting to buy your parts, or jumping in and getting into PC gaming by, say, buying a pre-built PC, even if that's like, you know what, be careful. But I will say this: be careful when it comes to buying a pre-built PC, because you may find one, that may not have the specs that you're looking for. So like you've consulted with someone like Inside the Lab, or you consulted with a member from Inside the Lab's community in our comment section or on other forms of social media. Which, if you're not following me on social media, quick plug, please, I welcome you to follow me on Instagram at Inside the Lab YT, and Twitter at Inside the Lab YT, and I'm on Facebook too, at the Inside the Lab show. I believe you can find me on there. But I constantly try to move the community into one place, but it's one of the things we talk about a great deal, and that is knowing when you've strived for the level of performance that you are targeting, and you've hit the mark to this configuration will deliver deliver the performance or deliver the experience that I am investing in. Because I consider PC gaming as an investment. Like when you're looking to get on this platform and you're looking to play games or experience games on this platform, initially that could be quite the investment. If you're talking especially about building a system that costs over $1,000, you want that system to be reliable. You want that system to be able to play the games you want to play. You want that system to be able to run those games on your monitor. You want that system to be able to last long. I know I said longevity, but you want that system to last long, be reliable, run the games you want to play, power your monitor. It's an investment. And typically when you invest in something, you want to get all of those things out of it in the long term. That can be a house, a car, a watch. And I don't know why I said a watch. Double the air horn, but it could be an expensive watch, what have you. Regardless of what it is you are investing in, you want to make sure you are getting those things out of it. And a PC, that applies to getting a gaming PC as well. But be careful in the pre-build trap, to where you see a pre-build, you have $600 saved up, and you're like, oh, that's right. Somebody in the Inside the Lab community said, if I want to stream games at 720p, then I should have a system with at least 16 gigabytes of RAM. So this pre-built with only 8 gigabytes, and it has an insufficient amount of storage. I know they said 500 gigabytes may not be enough on a single SSD, because I want to download Fortnite, or I want to play World of Warcraft. You want to play games as a service, which typically come with higher download sizes. So maybe that pre-build doesn't have doesn't hit all the performance marks that you are targeting. So you say, you know what, this pre-build does, but man, it's going to cost another $300. Okay, so I'll save up $300 and I'll get this one. But then you say, well, this pre-build that costs $1,400 has 32 gigabytes of DDR4, and it has a faster graphics card with more VRAM. Maybe I should save up and buy that. And you're constantly waiting and waiting. So you're not really building your budget over time. That way you can jump on your opportunity to buy that PC. You're just stalling. You're stalling and you're holding out. You're still waiting. you're not waiting with purpose. You're just waiting and waiting because you're just constantly trying to add more to your budget to get a little bit more from your system. But if you know your system needs 16 gigabytes of DDR4 and you need a graphics card with at least 6 gigabytes of VRAM and at least a system with, a dual storage solution, maybe that's a 500 gigabyte SSD and a 1 terabyte hard drive, or it may have a higher storage capacity. Instead of 500 gigabytes, it has 1 terabyte of SSD storage, which I recommend it should at least be an SSD, especially in here in 2023. You could, you could settle on what's best for your budget versus continuing to build a bigger budget over time. That pertains to buying a pre-built PC. When it comes to upgrading, you hit the mark. If your graphics card is, say, only packing let's say it's a 1050 Ti and only has 4 gigabytes of VRAM, and there's certain games you just know you can't play, and you're like, you know what, I need a graphics card that's going to be able to run God of War, or run Call of Duty Warzone, run any other game that may have a required specification of a video card to have more than 4 gigabytes of VRAM, and that's the instance, or that's the case, then once you've been able to build a bigger budget, one of the pros to waiting versus trying to make a side upgrade and get a graphics card that may not achieve those milestones, now you're waiting to save up. Maybe you can save up $150 a month, and next thing you know, you're looking at $450, and you're somewhere along the lines targeting a 6600 XT or an RTX 3060 or a 3050, somewhere along the lines there. Not a 3050 because that has 4 gigabytes of VRAM too, but maybe you're along the lines of an RTX 3060 or an RX 6600 or 6600 XT. It's been a while, y'all. I was gonna say I was hoping to be able to get to the live stream and not beguffle the stuff. Beguffle, that's a new word. Don't judge me, or judge me in the comment sections to keep the algo happy. But that's some of the pros to waiting. We stress pros. Let's focus on, of course, the cons, because you have to take the good with the bad. And I'm gonna get caught up in the chat here, I promise, really fast. But some of the cons, what are some of the cons to waiting? And by any means, if I'm missing some, fam, if I'm missing some for our replay, for our live viewers, especially our live viewers, because you can interact with the chat. But if I'm missing any that you think should qualify as a pro or a con to waiting to buy PC parts, please feel free to share them in the comment section. There isn't necessarily a such thing as a wrong answer, an ill-advised one, perhaps, or one that could spread misinformation or confusion, possibly. But for the most part, when it comes to this conversation, this is an open conversation, and we like to have as many viewers engage in the actual conversation to stay on board. And for our replay viewers, you can still comment with timestamps around these many parts of the conversation. If you feel like, hey, you know what, I think here's a pro I noticed I had to wait for 7 months and I missed because I missed out on sales, or because I was reluctant to take advantage of, say, Black Friday deals. I held out waiting to get the next best thing, and then it still cost me more money than it should, and I waited for this graphics card and I still didn't get the performance uplift that I was expecting. Let me know in the comment sections if I miss any of those marks and you want to add to them. Daniel says, when on an AMD based PC or an AMD PC or AMD configuration that's like God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Far Cry 6, they're the best looking games by far. And I believe what Daniel's referring to, especially earlier in the chat, is that those games are typically optimized for AMD's hardware. So they have algorithms and software behind the scenes that's running to improve the quality and FPS of those games, which, it's a conversation for another topic. If that's something you are truly interested in, and you say, you know what, yeah, that's something I'd want to take advantage of, then it goes, let me switch back here really fast, because this is important too. It goes back to where it starts with your buying process, the actual initial phase to getting into PC gaming. And that's, you start with the games you want to play and how you want to experience them. A good median or a good tool or resource for that, especially when you're trying to make the determination of how you want to experience those games, is to actually look at the game's minimum and recommended specs to run them. They are not the definitive guide, I will say, in my opinion, but they are good starting points or good roadmaps for you to at least stay above or at the minimum requirement. And then if you want a little bit more out of your experience, then you want to try to hit a little bit closer on the recommended specs. And if you can't, if it surpasses your budget or how much you have allocated to achieve that, then you want to fall somewhere along the lines of the middle, somewhere in between the middle of your minimum and your required FBA, your minimum and your required specifications or core configuration. And because some games at 1080p high settings may require a beefier graphics card with more VRAM than they would say at 1080p low settings, or they may require a faster CPU at ultra settings versus at medium settings, depending on the game. And this is why PC gaming is so exclusive. And one of the things I love about it the most is that it really creates this different experience for every single one of us who sit down and powers on our system of choice. Much like what I talked about at the top of this live stream, when you're able to sit down and what did I say? Power on the system of choice, load up your game of choice. If that game is The Witcher 3 and you want to play The Witcher 3 at 1080p ultra settings, your monitor should be at least a 1080p 70, 60 or 75 hertz monitor, and you should have a graphics card that will be fast enough to run that game at 1080p, and a CPU that's going to be fast enough to process the frames and all of the game logic behind it at that resolution. And what's a good starting point is looking at The Witcher 3's minimum and recommended specifications to play the game, or like some of the games that Daniel mentioned, like Spider-Man Remastered, same concept. And I'm gonna do a pop-up live stream here where we play Spider-Man Remastered. I wanted to do it this weekend, but like I said, Toasty Transistor gets the air horn. Toasty already roasted me in the comments about canceling and reschedule the show, and I already went through a long diatribe about it. So if you're just not tuning in and you're like, oh, what the heck? Yeah, you do that a lot, Lab. Why do you do that to your live shows? Fam, I'm not trying to kill the momentum at all. It's a necessary evil here to operating out of the makeshift. But we've been through all that. But I always recommend, no matter what, to set the reminder to be notified, regardless of if the show is canceled, rescheduled. I don't take the actual live stream down. Like, I don't take the video down. I leave it up. So even if you still hit set reminder, regardless if it's on a Saturday at 5 or now at 8 or Sunday at noon, you'll still be notified. And if you can attend the live stream, I hope you'll click through. But if not, then you say, hey, you know what, Lab? Sorry, I have to catch you on the replay. But I see my man Joe has rolled in. Joe Hornsey, it's good to see you. What's happening, Joe? Joe says, just got to use 6700 XT for $300 on eBay. That's a huge score. That's a solid pickup. Nice. Very capable graphics card, RDNA graphics card. For $300 on eBay. Nice, man. Salute to you. Salute to Joe for picking that up on the used market. I love our used market victories. And I love when members on our community can score dubs on the used market. It's an untapped ecosystem of value and savings. If you, depending on your region, you know how to move and you can jump on the right moments, because sometimes, people run into hardships, and instead of having that graphics card sitting on the shelf collecting dust, the Lab, we're looking at you. Instead of having that graphics card sitting on the shelf collecting dust, or sitting in a box in a closet collecting dust, why not save it? Because maybe you're in a pinch, maybe you have an emergency vehicle repair, or you're behind on a utility or something. Don't matter. Maybe you just need some cash right quick. You might be able to take advantage of somebody needing to, let go of a piece of hardware a little lower than they have to, or they should, simply because they want to turn that money real fast. But good stuff, Joe. Are you preparing to pair it with Are you ready to pair it with your potential 7950X? As Joe said, I stopped at Micro Center last week. They have a ton of video cards, and all of them are marked down. With the next gen coming out, I expect more deals coming. And that coincides with what I was just going on and on about the used market. And same thing applies. Within the next couple of months, we should see more of especially with legacy cards like your your 980 Ti's and 970s and things like that, back under $100 where they should. Your GTX 1060s near back to under $100 where they should, simply because faster options are now more accessible and more available at prices that make a little bit more sense. Joe says, I think the next year is going to be a buyer's market for GPUs. Absolutely, especially with there being an abundance. I mean, that's a very good point to. It's a very good point to illustrate, because we'll be pretty saturated with CPUs from both AMD and Intel between 13th generation and really 12th generation, still being super relevant in today's conversation on what's the best CPU to possibly buy for your money. You cannot exclude 12th generation. Hell, in my opinion, you can't exclude 10th generation. I just helped a buddy of mine out recently who picked up a 10th generation i3 at a reasonable price. I believe it said 110 or under $100, somewhere along the lines there. And I thought that was a great deal, especially for the games he wanted to play in his configuration, his setup. Joe says the 6700 XT is just to play with. I'm going to get a 7900 XT, maybe a 7950 if they come out. Flight simulator build is coming. Nice, man. Them flight simulator builds that I see on online, they're pretty elaborate. They're pretty elaborate, and the users, they typically go in terms of investing into their flight simulation experience, from the gaming chairs to sometimes a quad monitor setup. I'm not even talking about 3. You may see like 4 32 ultra wides, paired up just to create this I guess this visual of being inside of an actual cockpit of a plane, especially if it's a commercial plane, and not necessarily like a fight jet or a jet fighter plane. Dang it, you can tell I don't fly shit. Our stuff. Oh man, lad. This is a family-friendly environment, y'all. Daniel says, Joe, all the simulation games become the best thing ever when you dial stuff right up and really simulate them. And Microsoft, assuming that Joe is referring to playing Microsoft Flight Simulator, that game has a wide range of settings you can dial up and really tune in to capture this hyper-realistic feeling of driving an actual plane through all the different areas. I've only played MSF, Microsoft Flight Simulator, whatever. MSFS, y'all know what I'm talking about. I only played MSFS for benchmark purposes, but I watched my kids play, and it's a super detailed game, and I can see where it's fun playing on a super elaborate rig. Me personally, if I were to play a simulation-based like transportation game, it would definitely be a racing game, I guess you could say. I would say like Forza or something like that. That would be really neat to get the experience of being in a car but in a video game and driving like a fast car, and it's at like 3440 by 1440p, like a super detailed and rich resolution. I think the experience is just phenomenal at that point. Sparta Rules 1993 is in the house. It's good to see you, brother. Sparta Rules says, what's up, brother? What's up, family? It's good to see you. Sparta Rules is also a channel member, which I'd like to take a special moment really quick here to thank Sparta Rules 1993 for being a channel member and supporting the channel in a direct way with his monetary support. Super appreciate it. More channel member content is coming as we add more channel members to the club program. But thank you for being a channel member, Sparta Rules. You came right into the conversation of when's the wait or buy now approach, and what do you really gain and what do you really save? And I want to use Sparta Rules really quickly here to segue off of Joe's experience of picking up a 6700 XT, which he said it's going to be fun to play with, which I definitely condone those kind of pickups, bro. Like, most of the components we pick up as enthusiasts and tech enthusiasts, especially PC enthusiasts, most of it's probably for fun. Like most of it's fun, and a $300 6700 XT is hard to pass up to really see, what it's capable of. And I know, Joe, you stream, so it can even be a viable option to say if you want a dual stream setup to where you have two systems to manage your streams. Definitely an option, and it would really give your viewers a great viewing experience. And Daniel says some games like Baldur's Gate 3 character creation, you see their nostrils breathing in and out. Don't know if they're actually breathing. No, yeah, it's probably like an animation playing. But Daniel says, but when reality simulation, Genshin, some of their air glider challenges, you can't face the direction you want to glide. If there's wind to your back, you must open wings to catch the wind from front. And again, that's that CPU putting in the work of simulating how those elements behave in real life and how they would behave in a game. And if it's a simulation based game, then you'd want things like aerodynamics to be on point and on par with how they behave in real life. Or if not, it could be it could be experience breaking, or it could pull you out of the experience altogether if they're not. The Daniel says having glassy wet water and metallic metals and air makes games look pretty, but actually harder, honestly. Okay. So different objects maybe don't always look good when they're actually modeled behind how they behave in real life. Again, this could come down to how well the textures loading, how well the textures are done for the game, and how well they pop into the game, which also your storage will play a role into those things, guys. Remember, your storage may not be a critical component, but it will play a role in things like how fast your loading screens complete, if your game has loading screens, and how smooth your textures will pop in and load onto objects in the game and environments. So just some things to keep in mind. But Sparta Rules 1993, I wanted to use Brother Anthony as an example here, because Brother Anthony bought his graphics card in a time where most people were like, I'm a wait. Oh, it's better to just wait. I can save. We can even, if we go back to, we were on the cons of waiting versus the pros, but some of the pros we talked about the waiting, Sparta Rules had all to gain in those areas, but using him as an example is a perfect segue into what we were actually getting ready to jump in, and that was the cons to waiting. And so Sparta Rules invested in his system, bought his graphics card at a time when it made the most sense for him, and when he had the funds to do so, because these are some of the things that Sparta Rules didn't want to necessarily miss out on. In my opinion, I can't speak for Sparta Rules, but we've talked quite a lot since 2 times over getting Lord Vader set up and back into the fold. But in this case, let's say Daniel or any other viewer in this community, Shady Boy, who I hope Shady Boy, where are you at? But Sparta Rules 1993 bought his graphics card at the time during the tech when the Techdemic was, dare I say it, more than likely at an all-time high. When graphics cards were still 50 to 60% marked above MSRP, simply because of crypto miners and the global supply shortage chain being misappropriated, let's say. Some would consider it a manufactured inflation, could be so. But one thing was for sure is that crypto miners were taking a large portion of graphics cards. And I say it's just not a cryptocurrency or crypto miner induced problem, because when Zen 3 first launched, I did a video on it. The video took off at the time in terms of the size of my channel. But the video took off at the time because when Zen 3 launched, they were launching at prices above 40% markup as well, which crypto miners don't have any benefit to picking up, say, a 5600X or a 5800. No, that's mostly for your DIY enthusiasts, us, those of you who are more likely and hopefully here on this live stream and in this community. So it wasn't a cryptocurrency miner issue, more so a global supply issue, which affected those prices. Sparta Rules didn't want to wait. Most people say, you know what? No, I don't want to wait. There's some of the cons to that. What are some of the cons? Maybe Sparta Rules missed out on snagging his X570 Mini ITX motherboard at a decent price because maybe Amazon was running a sale. Maybe Best Buy was running a sale. Maybe Micro Center was running super sale because Micro Center typically has some of the best sales. I think I polled the chat, but if you ever been to a Micro Center, let me know. But if you've never been to a Micro Center, also let me know in the chat. My replay viewers as well, that question is for you. We vet the question every once in a while, but it's still good to know and not assume. But maybe, using the Sparta Rules approach, maybe that individual wouldn't want to miss out on deals and sales. So maybe they don't want to wait for an X7 670 motherboard. Maybe they didn't want to wait for a Pro Ryzen series of CPUs because they saw a 3600 on sale or a really sweet bundle deal for a 10600K or a 10900K and a Z490 motherboard. And you say, you know what, I'm not going to wait because I'm going to miss out on these deals and sales. It's actually going to cost me money. It's going to cost money to wait for just a little bit more performance, or one of the pros to waiting, new features. So it's going to cost you a little bit more money to wait for newer features that may or may not even be relevant to you, fam. You may not even need DDR5. You may not even need PCIe 5.0. Your graphics card you likely want to target may not even have support for PCIe 5.0. And then, of course, one of the biggest cons to waiting is missing out on the experience of being a PC gamer. At the time, Sparta Rules, I use Sparta Rules as an example here because we talked a lot at the initial conception of Lord Vader. That's his build. That's Sparta Rules 1993 build's name. Which, name your PCs, please. Name your PCs. My bread and beauty here is Snow White. It's Snow White. But name your PCs. The Sparta Rules played on console, which that's typically the journeyman's path or an individual's path to coming onto this platform. Likely and more than likely, you're coming over from consoles. Okay. And so maybe you're tired of playing on consoles. That was my approach. I can tell you right now, that was my approach. I was just tired of playing on consoles. And I did not want to miss out on the experience of being a PC gamer. I just didn't. I did not want to wait. And at that time, there was this whole wait for Ryzen gimmick and gag that was going on, that I remember at one point some of the Facebook groups I was in were banning users for recommending someone wait for Ryzen, waiting for a poster, wait for Ryzen. It was very weird, like wait for Ryzen. It would get you banned. But maybe you don't want to wait or miss out on that experience as a PC gamer. Maybe you don't need the next generation of Ryzen CPUs. If you just bought a 3600 on a, say, X470, or you upgraded to a 3800X, or you did a BIOS update and you're on an X400 series chipset and you upgraded to a 5800X or something to that extent, you're likely still batting 100% 1,000, fam. You're still good. And you don't have to miss out on your experience as a PC gamer simply because you want to wait for a little bit more performance. It's a strong con to waiting. Maybe Sparta Rules, I don't want to speak for Sparta Rules, but maybe Sparta Rules didn't want to continue to sacrifice or miss out on being a PC gamer. Most of us, we want to make that transition. We want to make it now. We were ready yesterday to play Red Dead Redemption 2 on PC. For me, it was to play Skyrim heavily modded, fully graphic settings fully maxed out. Skyrim, I think it was the definitive edition or the special edition. That edition, there was like 1,000% of them. But Skyrim for me was that game. That was the first game I purchased and installed and downloaded as many mods as I possibly could. I did not want to wait anymore to experience that game as a PC gamer. And then there's, lost or missing performance, one of the cons to waiting. And this one's a bit trickier than the other, but this is more so for us who have a system already, not necessarily somebody like Sparta Rules 1993 who was looking to, break onto the platform from console over to PC gaming, or maybe you walked away from PC gaming in its infancy and you're out of touch with it on a modern perspective, right? Like you unaware of the AM4 socket, or you're not familiar with anything past Bulldozer, right? Or Haswell. over on the Intel side. But maybe you already have your system and you're still like, I'm going to wait. I have a GTX 560, right? Like a 1 GB video card, or a 2 GB RX 560, and you're saving and you're saving. You got like $200-300, and you're like, well, I want a graphics card, but I want to wait, and I want to wait for the RX 7400 XT. Or I heard it's going to have, this, and it's going to have these features. The graphics card is going to have a tri-fan cooler setup. Maybe there's something specifically you're waiting for that graphics card. But while you're waiting, you're missing out on lost performance, because what's available now with that money could introduce performance enhancing metrics right now with your $300 graphics card. For example, Joe mentioned he picked up a 6700 XT for $300 USD. If you're on a 500 series NVIDIA card, like a 560 or a 570, or even a 770 or 980 or 960, and you're just waiting and you're waiting, you are missing out on lost performance, because you are waiting for something slightly better and you're sacrificing for the best that's accessible to you right now. So that very much could be Sparta Rules, or that could be someone you know. If your system is a little bit more competent and it's, you have a beefy graphics card, or, you got a system you put some thought and coin into, and you got a mate, friend, partner, family member who didn't have access to a higher budget, and maybe they skimped here and there and their system isn't as superior to yours, and you're recommending, and you're telling them, saying, hey, you can make side upgrades. It doesn't necessarily have to be a complete configuration haul. You don't need to swap out your motherboard and your CPU. You get a graphics card that's going to be fast enough to keep up with your CPU, and you could still do things like increase the performance or enhance the visual and detail in your games, not by waiting for something that's going to be slightly better, but by taking advantage of what's accessible to you now. So it's one of the strong cons to waiting. Daniel says, we can see AMD flexed on everyone with their lowest model 7600 CPU beating the highest model Intel CPU in their promos. I mean, that's initially in their promos. We have to see, what Intel responds with, especially in terms of the upcoming i5 13600K, or even the i5 13400. I think we're going to see a move that a lot of, I'm not team oriented, but a lot of Team Blue users wanted to see way back on 9th generation, with a proper response to AMD. As Daniel says, so you don't need to break the bank right away. Get an affordable mid-range AMD system. Yes, absolutely. Very well said, Daniel, because that's one of the things that, let me switch back here to the home real quick. That's one of the things we talk about, is not needing to break the bank right away. You get an affordable mid-range AMD system, like Daniel mentioned. You get a system that's going to deliver the most value for your money now. Okay, it's something we preach about and talk a lot about here in this community. Sorry, I had to just give a quick round of applause, because it warms my heart. That's the same message I perpetuate here in this community, right? In our community of tech enthusiasts and PC gamers, is you don't need to break the bank right away. You can get an affordable mid-range system, and it doesn't necessarily have to even be an AMD system. If you want to focus on AMD optimized titles like Far Cry, Tomb Raider, things like that, then it could be in your interest. You might get a 10 to 15% FPS boost by going with games that have been optimized for that hardware. But typically, and in terms of NVIDIA, they seem to be not historically, now here recently with the RX 6000 series lineup of GPUs, they've been brilliant. I even think the 5700 XT was a great card until the tech demo happened, and we started seeing 5700 XTs go for 4 times as much as if they should, and even up to like 6 months later, they were still selling at a price to where the value was still being diminished, as you should be able to pick up a 5700 XT for under $200 USD. I wouldn't pay any more than maybe $170, $150 for a 5700 XT. But we could see that change, or that could very much change in the future. 5700 XT prices could remain the same, or they could come down. Joe mentioned earlier, he picked up a 6700 XT for 300 USD on eBay. That's a good sign because typically eBay are going to sell, or eBayers, is that what they call us? Is that what they call us? eBayers? Typically eBay sellers will list their items a little bit higher because the market has a much wider reach of buyers versus, say, your OfferUp on or Facebook Marketplace. If you're not willing to ship, then the buyer has to be willing to to drive to make the hike to you. If you're not shipping, so you may list a price lower than usual versus somebody on eBay can wait to wait for funds to process and wait for the item to be delivered, versus somebody who needs the cash immediately and they just want to meet you over by the Royal Farms or Wawa or what have you. It's funny because I was talking to Sparta Rules. He said, Sparta Rules said, no, I never heard of Wawa. If you're on the East Coast, tell me if you heard of Wawa. If not, that's very interesting. It's a common meeting place for buying and selling used parts. But anyway, back to the topic. So those are some of the cons to waiting. You miss out on deals, sales from things like Micro Center. As Joe mentioned, Micro Center is awesome. So I'm gonna go ahead and assume Joe has verified. Joe has been to a Micro Center. Joe has been to a Micro Center, and I some of you I know Spider Roll's been to a Micro Center. Daniel, have you ever been to a Micro Center? Do you have Micro Centers in your area? Do let us know. And our replay viewers, that question is for you as well, for our replay viewers, and you're listening to this video podcast, how I like to market them. Do tell me, have you been to a Micro Center? And I will tell you all the benefits to going to a Micro Center. And no, Micro Center has not paid me to. This is not, Micro Center is not sponsoring this show. They have not paid me to do so. It's simply because you can take advantage of some good deals at Micro Center. And the staff is pretty friendly as well and pretty knowledgeable. So they should be able to help you if you aren't as familiar with the process. They won't help you build, but of course they'll help you answer your questions when it comes to the actual configuration of your system. But you miss out on deals, the experience as an actual PC gamer you miss out on, and you miss out on lost performance if you're holding out to, say, upgrade your current configuration or your current system. So we talk about the pros and cons to, waiting. The pros and cons to waiting to buy PC parts. What are some pros and cons to buying right now, like living in it now? Like what are some pros to buying now? So for one, you can take advantage of the new used price to performance. That's saving money or putting it towards something else. But if you buy now and you're ready to buy now, you can hop right over to the Facebook Marketplace or OfferUp, and you could take advantage of users who have already upgraded, or they are tired of their 300 series or 400 series motherboards collecting dust, or they have a CPU they upgraded from. So maybe they had an old Ryzen 5 2600 or 2600X, and they updated their BIOS, and now they're on a 5800X, and they say, you know what, I can get rid of this 2600X for $100. $100 and it's yours. You could pick up a X470 motherboard or a B450 motherboard for under $80, $70, and you got yourself a dynamic duo to get you started with, depending on the games you want to play. But that combination should run the majority of games that are popular, and most modern gamers strive to play. That's your games of service, that's your Call of Duties, your Fortnites, and even your games that are a little bit more on the graphic and hardware demanding side, like The Witcher 3. I keep going back to The Witcher 3, but like The Witcher 3 or even Spider-Man Remastered. Same concept. But so that's one of the pros. You can take advantage of new use price to performance. It's a term we've pegged here in this community, and new use price to performance, or as the card entitles, new use market. But the new use price to performance is, say, in Sparta Rules 1993, we use his testimony as an example as well, because Sparta Rules also took advantage of their approach to new use price to performance, and that is buying, say, a used case on the market that may cost slightly less than what the case would new, while still investing in new components that you do want to last a little bit longer or come with a warranty. For example, your motherboard or your graphics card. But even then, you could still say, I'm gonna take a risk. I'm willing to take the gamble. I'm willing to take a gamble on this X470 motherboard. I don't see any bent pins. I don't see any bent corners or any scratches. The user said it was working, in perfect condition. When it's components like your motherboard or CPU or graphics cards, I try to recommend, where applicable, to wait until you can actually test those components when you first get them. If you can, it may all not be possible, but if you can, target those components when you are actually able to ensure that they work. Okay, if that's a graphics card that you don't have any picture, the seller didn't list any pictures of it working, and you're just going off of their word, sure, things like eBay, Facebook Marketplace, and OfferUp has buyer and seller protection contingencies put in place. But what you can't protect yourself from is destroying your hope of this component working as advertised, or you get it and everything you thought was supposed to happen didn't, and say your system won't turn on, or the motherboard's bricked, or the graphics card works but it's flickering, or it won't, the moment it goes to render a pixel, it crashes. So where applicable, if you can buy components you definitely can test as soon as you first get them. That way, if something's not right, you can send it back and you're protected as a buyer to get your money back, and you're not getting hosed and beat out of, in most instances it could be up to a couple $100, especially if you're getting a bundle CPU and motherboard combination. And some other pros to buying now is that you can enjoy PC games without the lengthy wait. I mean, you could just sit down and you can enjoy them now. There is no waiting in between. If you want to play God of War on a PC because you're a loaf like me and you refuse to buy Sony consoles just to play Sony exclusives, and you're wondering what's taking Sony so long to come up with a launcher for PC users to just be able to buy their exclusive games, it's so mind-boggling to me, because I would buy them. Okay, I would buy them. But if that's you and you're coming from Xbox and you can play Microsoft exclusives on PC, but if you're coming from Xbox and you're like, man, I'm really upset that I missed out on some solid classics like Days Gone, or Spider-Man Remastered, or Forbidden Horizon Dawn and East. I don't play the game, but they look great on PC. I will say that. I've seen them in person, and they still look very rich and detailed over on PC. And maybe that's you, and that's me too. And Sony needs to come on and hurry up and give us a launcher so that we can experience those games at least 3 months, 2 months after they release. I'm trying not to get as excited for God of War Ragnarok, because it won't be available on PC at launch, and who knows when it'll come. So I'm like, if I just gotta wait, then I just gotta wait. But you can enjoy PC games now without the lengthy wait. That's also games like if you've been stuck playing Tomb Raider at 720p or 480p, or Fortnite at 720p, 480p. That also is attributes to being able to enjoy PC games now, not just altogether, but in a state that's playable and that looks graphically appealing to you, or what's visually appealing to your eyes, because that can be different between you and I. But one thing I think we all can agree upon, and that is, the higher the resolution, the better the level of detail in your games. Let me get caught up in the chat here really fast. Daniel got a lot going on, but I appreciate you adding to the conversation, Daniel. Let me give you a quick round of applause. It's a lot. I try to stay focused on the conversation, especially since at this point, replay viewers can't necessarily see the chat, and I want them to focus on the message. But staying focused on the conversation here, and the pros to buying now. The last pro, and that's, again, you can take advantage of sales and deals. That's not missing out. You don't have to miss out on being able to bank some of that money that would have cost you to get that motherboard and CPU. Or you could come across a deal somebody is selling over on the used market that more than likely won't be there at a month's time or 30 days from now, especially if it's a graphics card being sold at a flexible rate, like the 6700 XT Joe picked up for $300 USD, or in some instances instances it might be lower. The evaluation of the used market is a live stream that we're going to tackle here very, very soon, because and likely episode, I don't want to say next episode because they are planned out, y'all. Let me say this: your boy might have to schedule them and flex them every once in a while, but they are planned out by episode numbers, at least 3 episodes at a time. But the used market and evaluating the used market is an approach that we will revisit here, as the dynamic is starting to change, and graphics cards that were inaccessible and unattainable to the market that I like to talk to just wasn't there. And so that could shift and that could change, and that dynamic's going to shift and change. And I really think it's a conversation we need to revisit, y'all, that we need to revisit. But yeah, the higher the resolution, the better the game's going to look. That doesn't necessarily mean that the game's going to run better, because typically as you start to dial in the graphic settings and you start to bump up your resolution from 720p to 1080p, you start to take a hit on your FPS. So having a fast CPU to keep up with all those frames are just as important. But when one of the pros to buying now, to not waiting, to not having that, if we circle back all the way to the buy now approach, one of the pros to buying now is being able to take advantage of sales and deals. You don't have to miss out on those Micro Center deals, the Best Buy, Amazon, Black Friday deals, where motherboards and other components are selling cheaper than what they normally would. DDR4 kits. Maybe you've been waiting for a component to come down in price because you want RGB. Like shout out to RGB. And maybe the extra cost associated with those components and those features maybe priced you out initially, but now that they're on sale, you can actually recoup that 20-30% price reduction and jump on board and take advantage of that. So that's one of the not one. If I keep wanting to say one, no, it's not just one. There's three of them. Three pros to buy it now. You can take advantage of the new used market and that new used price to performance, saving money or putting it towards something else. So if you were able to snag a graphics card at $300 when you had $450 to spend, or you saved up $450 to spend, and you did not wait, okay? You did not wait. You took advantage of the now, because there's no greater feeling than winning the now as a PC gamer. So you saved up $450, $430, and you say, you know what, damn, I was able to snag up a 6700 XT for $300. I have $140 left over my budget. What does that mean? Oh, I can go from getting an i5, 11600K now to I could put, an additional $200 and I can get a faster CPU. I can go from 16 gigabytes to 32 gigabytes, a 500 gigabyte NVMe M.2 to a 1 terabyte NVMe M.2, a faster storage solution. You can take that money and repurpose it elsewhere when you take advantage of the pros to buying now. And that's taking advantage of sales and deals. Sales just not over on the new front, but deals over on the used market as well. So those are some of the pros to buying now. Now, again, I like to take the good with the bad here in this community. You have to take the good with the bad here in all things in life. But here in this community, I do like to have a good and bad approach with things. But three of the core cons, and again, if I'm missing any, if you think there are some that are omitted from my list, do feel free to chime in and add them along with the conversation. There are no such things as, dumb answers or dumb questions. So feel free to add my replay fam and my live viewer fams, which again, if you haven't yet, do be sure to hit the like button for me on your way in or on your way out. If you're unable to stay for the full duration of the show, I totally understand, but you can hit the like button for us on your way in or on your way out as you bounce in and say, who the heck is this guy? I had a few new subscribers, which I tell you what, shout out to our new subscribers. They've been slowly trickling in. Not as much as I like, but I have slowed down on the content. So that's all in all fairness. But shout out to our new subscribers. There are quite a few of you. As even here on this live stream, there are a few names that and faces that I haven't seen before. But some of the cons to buying now is that you have to settle for less, right? Like you have to settle with what you can afford. And this may lead to you not having a system that is as robust that you hoped for. And that's, for example, if you saved up $450 because you want a graphics card that, exceeds the 16 gigabyte VRAM allotment that's in the RTX 3060, which then you're at a much higher graphics card price point at that point, up in the tie phases. But 16 gigabyte is a lot, especially if you're looking to break into a higher resolution like 1440p. But if you have to, say, settle for a 16 series GTX graphics card versus an RTX card or a 6700 XT because you do not want to wait, you're like, I'm not feeling the cons to wait in lab. No, 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 no. That's not me, fam. I see that as a con. I don't want to wait for that. I'm okay with buying now, right? Well, that's one of the cons. One of the cons to buying now is that you have to typically settle for less. You have to settle for specifications that originally weren't hoping for, and because you're limited by your budget, you have to compromise in some areas. And again, this could lead you with a system that's not as robust as the one you hoped for, or one that's one that's not as powerful, or I guess you could say complementary of the games you want to play. Daniel says, oh, when buying a PC, get a TV, not a monitor. TV specs are worlds better. Can be bigger, maybe has 4000 nits HDR versus 400 nits HDR. If you're valuing image quality over latency, then that could be a decision one would want to make. But typically monitors have faster refresh rates and like not refresh rates that are like processed artificially, native refresh rates, and lower response times. As Daniel says, it's not a hard choice. TVs are brighter, closer to daylight, and can be used for TV. Well, TV sure can be used for TV, but that could very much well be subjective. Again, it's good to where if you can get into areas like a Micro Center, see the monitor in person before you buy it. Your monitor is the window to your PC's soul. It's one of the reasons why I would recommend you game on a monitor and not a TV. But that could totally boil down to you yeah, Daniel, very good point with HDMI 2.1 TVs, but HDMI 2.1 is becoming more prominent on mainstream monitors. It wasn't at first when support first dropped for HDMI 2.1, but now it's becoming more and more mainstream to where your best option still is a monitor. A lot of PC solutions and where users play their games, a TV just isn't adequate enough for to complement their space. But a 22-inch 1080p monitor suits the needs for most people, especially if you're playing competitively. Remember, it boils down to the type of games you want to play and how you want to experience them. If you're into fast-paced games and competitive multiplayer and competitive first-person shooters, then you want to game on a monitor, especially a fast one, because brightness and nits and other features may or may not be as important to you versus getting the fastest possible, the highest possible refresh rate that your system can power, paired with the lowest possible response time. But on the subject to the cons to buying now, not only do you have to settle for less, but you may find yourself having to upgrade more often or upgrade more frequently than previously believed, or that you previously thought you may have to. And that's because you will find yourself, growing content with the output of the output that your system is processing. So maybe your system can only play, I hate to go back to The Witcher 3, but let me go back to The Witcher 3. But maybe your system at 1080p max settings, like you turned everything on, but maybe Hairworks, more settings are turned up than not at 1080p, and maybe you could only get 45, 50 FPS. And you're like, man, I thought I would be okay with this graphics card, but nope, I want to be able to hit 60 FPS or higher, or maybe you get FPS drops that really diminish your experience, or it hinders your experience and it just makes the game unplayable, or maybe your frame rate's unstable and so you want a faster graphics card and you're like, man, I'm gonna have to save up. Or if you don't need to save up and you're a high roller, you could just say, I'm just going to go out next week and pick up an RTX 3080, although you just spent $400 to $500 on your graphics card 3 or 4 months later. Some of the cons to buying now is not properly planning your upgrade path, and you find yourself upgrading more frequently than you originally planned to. This obviously will find yourself this will prove to be costly for you over time. Even if you're in a state of trying to recoup some of the cost of that upgrade, there's still some level of price, some level or some price loss you have to eat, because if you pay $500 for the graphics card, you likely can't sell it for $500. Even if it is 3 months old, you won't be able to get back what you paid for it, and you still have to go pay more for something that's a little faster, to where if you put proper thought into how you want to play your games, and you looked at their minimum and their recommended specs, and you actually put thought and properly researched the type of games you want to play, then that upgrade path becomes less frequent and becomes further and further apart. So you are actually targeting generational performances or generational introductories to newer hardware. You're not on a 3 to 4 month upgrade path. You're more like on an 8 month to 12 or 18 month upgrade path, to where it's much more spread out. And even if you are in a state to where you're saving, $100 a month or $200 a month, by the time you're ready to upgrade, regardless of the class of what's available, it could be the 8700 RX 8700 XT, right? That's retailing for $1,600 or $1,500. If you've taken advantage of waiting and you've added to increase your budget, then by that time you have already exasperated the value with your current hardware and your current configurations. And 18 months from now, you're ready to pass that value on to another user, not having to eat the cost of the upgrade and say pay another $900 to $1,000. So you compare that, the cost of that 6-month upgrade costs more now than, say, a generational upgrade you can make in a year's time. 6 months, you've spent $1,800 on a graphics card, or $1,300 on a graphics card, and you sold one, maybe recouped, $300-400, but you're still over in terms of your investment. And it was to gain maybe 10 to 20 FPS, or to go from high settings to ultra settings. So think about that when you are considering waiting. And then the last con to buying now is underspending, which goes directly with the upgrade, the process or the concept of having to upgrade more frequently than you originally planned to. And that's because you underspend. You didn't spend enough. So that example I just gave you is to where, you spend $400-500 on a graphics card, somewhere between there, like a GPU in the $400 to $500 range, somewhere in that class. But you didn't spend enough to meet your initial expectations. So now 2-3 months from now, you're ready to bump up a class, which doing that within a 6 month window isn't a smart way to spend your money, right? Especially when it comes to investing in PC hardware, because they age quickly. If you haven't noticed, they age quickly, so that it may not be in your best interest to underspend when you're trying to buy now, because you won't meet your initial expectations. So those are some of the cons to buying now. We talked about the pros to buying now, but those are some of the cons. You settle for less, or a system that's not as robust, and you have to upgrade more often than you want, or you have to upgrade frequently, which is going to cost you money. It's going to cost you, especially if the component you're replacing has low resale value, like RAM or something to that extent. because RAM is not expensive at the moment, but there was a time when we were going through a RAM shortage too, and DRAM was stupid expensive. 32 gigabyte kits of Corsair Vengeance Pro was selling for about $600 to $700. It was insane. And then you underspend, you'll find yourself not investing enough to meet your initial expectations. So those are some of the cons to buying now. An even more intricate part to this topic and conversation is knowing when the time is right, or deciding when the time is right. Where are you currently on your enthusiast journey? Are you at a point of interest, or interest, not like interest like money occurring over time, but like interest like, I'm coming in. That was so bad. But are you at a point of interest, or at a point of enhancement, or a period of enhancement? Are you looking to break into the platform, or are you looking to enhance your experience on the platform? Like you want to upgrade from legacy hardware. Maybe your CPU, maybe you have an old i3 or i5 and you're ready to bump up to an i7 or a Ryzen 7, right? So you're looking to enhance your experience, not break into it, but enhance it. But where are you currently on your enthusiast journey? A point of interest or a period of enhancement? New CPU and GPU launches cost more than their predecessor, right? But most importantly, really stop and consider what it is you're waiting for. Much like the question I proposed at the top of this show. Stop and consider what it is you're waiting for. Again, new CPU and GPU launches, they cost more than their predecessors. So you're not saving money necessarily because the next best thing is likely going to cost you more, right? You want to hold out from getting an RTX 3060 now to buy an RTX 4060. The 4060 is likely going to cost more than the 3060. It's not, game changing like what AMD is doing with our AMD's. It's not game changing like what AMD is doing with Ryzen 7000, where the prices are going to be the same as they were when Zen 3 launched. And now we're getting an entirely new socket, new motherboard features, all the good stuff. So the next best thing is likely going to cost you more. But building or buying around your budget for the now, today, the present, sets you up instead of forcing you to catch up. Okay? It sets you up instead of forcing you to catch up. Now, if there's one thing you take away from today's show, is this: no one understands your financial situation better than you. And all of our financial situations differ and vary from one another. So knowing when to buy is entirely up to you and your budget. And if that time is now, then it's a question of to buy or not to buy. To wait for the next best thing, waiting in obscurity between generations and hardware launches. Missing out on your XP or your experience as a PC gamer because you're waiting until you can buy the best. But the reality is there's always going to be something great, but it won't always cost you the same. Value isn't measured in a component's price tag. It's measured by performance output, whether that's numbers or aesthetic, whether that's a case that has premium build quality or precious, premium metals, or has tempered glass instead of acrylic glass, or tempered glass or what have you, or, no window inside. It's not always about performance output relative to numbers. It could also be an aesthetic property as well, that a component's value is measured. But value isn't always measured in a component's price tag. Again, it's measured by performance output, performance or aesthetic. How well can it render, or how well will it look while the whole entire process is going on? That's why your system is turned on. Buy the best hardware you can with an active budget now. Save for the new, build or upgrade over time, because prices will drop, but the value will remain the same. Woo. Y'all, man, such a great conversation today. I really enjoyed finally getting this one out. It's a topic that's been in schedule limbo, schedule hell now for weeks, but we finally got it out, and I think you could definitely add more context to it when it comes to should you buy now or wait to buy. But to give you the TLDR recap version, I'll quickly say is it really will come down and boil down to your financial situation and your expectations as a PC gamer. How do you want to experience games? Do you want to experience them at a high refresh rate and a lower resolution? Or are you a gamer like myself and you appreciate detail and graphics in your games? You want your game to appear lifelike, or you want your graphics to look crisp, and you want the textures to be properly loaded in, and you want your animations to feel fresh and lively. That is the type of gamer I am. It will start there. Again, buy the best system you possibly can with your money now, and then you wait to upgrade over time, because prices will drop, but the value will remain the same. 3080, whatever value that an RTX 3080 Ti or RTX 3080 has left now since launch, that graphics card won't cost you the same, but the value will still be there. The value for a 10 gigabyte 80 series base NVIDIA card will still be retained. It's not old. It's not obsolete. It's not obsolete. It may even be old, but it's not obsolete. 40 series won't make a 4080 won't make an RTX 3080 irrelevant. It just won't. The value will still be there, but the price will drop. So you build the best you can now, save and build or save for that upgrade over time. But all right, now, man, I tell you what, do me a favor again, y'all. Hit the like button for me if you haven't yet. Typically for the uninitiated, when we get to this point where I say, all right, I think we slow the ride down, because the live experience is essentially a roller coaster. It's essentially a roller coaster, but I think the ride is slowly coming to an end. I can hear the roller coaster slowing down, and I do, strongly recommend you stick around for the end credits. If you've never seen it yet, Daniel, we're looking at you. But to start off with, I do like to say hello and salute to all the live viewers who popped into the chat today. Daniel, thank you for popping in and adding so much to the conversation. Sorry I couldn't keep up with it all in the chat, but again, for looser live streams, I will say our pop-up live streams, that's typically where the focus of the conversation is on you, the community. So do be sure to keep a lookout for those, for our pop-up live streams, to where the focus is the chat and community engagement. But Daniel, thank you for popping in today's live show. Stick around for the after credits. It's really cool. A lot of history and clips from other videos. But Joe, it's good to see you as well, Joe, for popping in and adding to the conversation. Telling me how awesome your Micro Center is. Yeah, the Micro Center is dope. Sparta Rules 1993. Once again, Sparta Rules 1993 for being a channel member and active supporter here on the channel. I appreciate your viewership, brother, and your support, man. It really, really means the world. It really does. All of you guys' support. It really means a lot. It helps me keep going and the content and get over any obstacles. But keep the round of applause going for, of course, Mrs. Mod, for keeping the conversation fluent and for sharing any additional and helpful links, which again would maybe do a closing plug at the end for additional ways you can support the channel or stay up to date on the content. Let me see. And Shady Boy, I think Shady Boy was also in the house. Shady Boy gets a round of applause and the air horn. I don't know, because I like Shady Boy's name. Shady Boy gets a round of applause and the air horn. And that's it. All right, we got caught up on the chat. Again, I wasn't sure how many people would turn out today's live show. We have a lot, we have a little, but when I'm able to get them scheduled and out on time, it's typically when we have the best viewership. So I am going to get back on that and continue to work on that. But with that said, thanks for stopping by and hanging out with us during this YouTube live. I do hope to catch you on the next one, which will be next Saturday. So do keep a lookout for the scheduled live stream link. Again, hit the notification reminder button. Doesn't matter when the live stream comes out. If you hit the reminder, you will be notified, even if I schedule it. So set the reminder, hit the like button for me, all that good stuff. If you want to join our email list, the links is here in the chat, or you can also find them in the description box below. And sometimes I think I post them in the comment section. Replay viewers as well, thank you for hanging out. If you made it to the end, I always welcome you to tell me you made it in the end. I would say like a secret code, but then those of you who are watching could just go back and type it, but I'll know you were here. But if you made it this far, do let me know in the comment section. I love engaging and interacting with the community down there in the comment section. Again, do be sure to stick around for the end credits. I do hope to catch you all on the next one. So until then, be easy.